funeral flowers for my grandparents hadn't even begun to wilt when my aunt and uncle showed up at the lake house with a signed eviction notice and a crew of moving men. They stood on the porch, smirking, telling me I had exactly 1 hour to pack 28 years of my life into garbage bags. They thought they had won. They thought they had successfully stripped away my home, my memories, and my dignity. But as my uncle reached out to physically grab my bags, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was the one call I'd been waiting for. I pressed answer, put it on speaker, and watched the smug smiles completely drain from their faces. By the time that 2-minute conversation ended, my uncle looked like he was about to faint, and the moving crew was already walking away. My name is Elena, and I am 27 years old. For as long as I can remember, my grandparents' lake house wasn't just a beautiful piece of property. It was my ultimate sanctuary. When my parents passed away in a tragic accident when I was just a teenager, this house and the 2 incredible people who built it became my entire world. It was a place of endless summers, crackling fireplaces, and unconditional love. But everything shattered into a million pieces last month when my grandparents were taken from me in a sudden, horrific plane crash, a tragedy that changed everything and left me completely broken. The grief was a heavy, suffocating blanket, and I spent weeks wandering through the quiet halls of the estate, trying to process the agonizing silence they left behind. I had been the one here every single day, caring for them as they grew older, adjusting my life to ensure they were never lonely. Yet, the funeral flowers had barely begun to wilt when the front door was violently thrown open. My Aunt Victoria and Uncle Raymond marched into the living room, accompanied by their adult children. They didn't come to offer a hug or shed a tear. They swept their eyes over the expensive paintings and hand-carved furniture like vultures evaluating a carcass. They didn't see a home filled with memories. They saw dollar signs. Before I could even speak, Uncle Raymond stepped forward, his face completely devoid of empathy. The storm had officially arrived. "You need to grab your things and leave, Elena," Uncle Raymond said, his voice cold and completely devoid of the warmth my grandfather used to fill this room with. He didn't even look me in the eye as he tossed a thick, stapled document onto the mahogany coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud that seemed to echo through the entire house. I stared at it, my heart hammering against my ribs. Aunt Victoria stepped forward, crossing her arms tightly over her designer blouse. "Don't look so shocked, dear. Since your grandparents passed away, without leaving a valid, updated will, the entire estate automatically reverts to us, the surviving children. That is how the law works." I looked from my aunt to my uncle, completely stunned. "What are you talking about? Grandpa told me everything was taken care of. He promised me I would never have to worry about a roof over my head." Well, clearly he was losing his mind toward the end. My cousin Julian chimed in from the doorway, a smug smirk plastered across his face. "The fact is, this lake house is going to an upscale developer by the end of the month. We're turning this old white elephant into a massive payout." "You can't do this," I whispered, the tears finally spilling over my eyelashes. "I've lived here for over a decade. I looked after them while all of you couldn't even bother to call on holidays." Uncle Raymond checked his gold watch with theatrical impatience. "Your personal arrangements are not our problem, Elena. Bloodline rules the estate now. You have exactly 60 minutes to pack up whatever fits into garbage bags and clear out. Your time starts right now." My knees felt weak as I turned away from their smug, heartless faces. I retreated into my grandfather's private study, locking the heavy oak door behind me to block out the sound of my aunt and uncle already dividing up the living room decor. 60 minutes. They were giving me a single hour to erase my entire existence from the only place I called home. I collapsed into Grandpa's worn leather chair, the familiar scent of pipe tobacco and old books wrapping around me like a final, ghostly embrace. Tears blinded me as I began pulling open the desk drawers, grabbing my birth certificate, old family photos, and the small keepsakes I couldn't bear to leave behind. As I reached into the very back of the deep bottom drawer, my knuckles brushed against a strange seam in the wood. I paused, wiping my face, and pressed down hard. With a soft click, a hidden compartment popped open. Inside lay a heavy, old brass key, and a crisp business card for a high-profile corporate defense attorney named Charles Sterling, a name my family had never mentioned. I flipped the card over, and my breath caught in my throat. In Grandpa's sharp, unmistakable handwriting, it read, "Elena, when they come for the house, call him immediately. Don't shed a tear. He knows what to do." A sudden spark of hope flared in my chest. I wasn't completely defenseless after all. The 60 minutes ticked away like a countdown to my execution. When the grandfather clock in the hallway struck the hour, a loud, aggressive banging echoed against the study door. I stood up, took a deep, steadying breath, and slipped the attorney's business card tightly into my jeans pocket. I unlocked the door and walked out into the main hallway, only to find that the nightmare had escalated. Uncle Raymond hadn't just been waiting. He had actually brought a hired moving crew into the house. 2 large men were already lifting a box of my personal books, while my cousin Julian pointed toward the front door with a mocking grin. "Time's up, Elena," Aunt Victoria called out from the front porch, her voice dripping with synthetic pity. "We've instructed the men to start moving your things onto the driveway. It's better this way. A clean break." I followed them outside onto the wide wooden porch, watching in disbelief as my life was treated like garbage. Uncle Raymond stepped directly into my path, his chest puffed out in open arrogance. "You have no legal standing here, girl. A grandchild doesn't override the legal bloodline. Move aside." But I didn't move. Instead, I pulled my phone out of my pocket, my fingers flying across the screen as I dialed the direct number written on the back of Charles Sterling's card. As the line began to ring, I looked my uncle dead in the eye and put the phone on speaker. The call connected on the very third ring. A deep, authoritative voice boomed through the speaker, instantly cutting through the humid lake air. "Charles Sterling speaking." "Mr. Sterling, my name is Elena," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "I am standing on the porch of my grandparents' lake house, and my Uncle Raymond is currently trying to evict me." There was a brief, sharp pause on the other end, followed by the sound of rustling papers. When the attorney spoke again, his tone was ice cold. "Ah, yes. Raymond and Victoria. I have been expecting their move. Please inform your uncle that if he or anyone else touches a single item in that house, they are committing a federal crime." Uncle Raymond scoffed loudly, stepping closer to the phone. "Listen here, pal, I don't know who you are, but my parents died without a will. As their legal surviving children, this entire $40 million estate belongs to us. We are standing right here with a signed eviction notice from a real attorney." A low, mocking chuckle came from the speaker. "Your real attorney friend is about to be disbarred, Raymond. Your parents did not die without a will. 6 weeks before the tragic crash, they executed a brand new, ironclad final will and testament with my firm. And let me make this explicitly clear for the moving crew present. Elena is named the sole heir to the entire $40 million estate, including all properties and liquid assets." The color completely drained from Aunt Victoria's face. Uncle Raymond froze mid-stride, his mouth hanging open like a landed fish. The 2 moving men instantly dropped my box of books onto the porch, backing away with wide eyes. "This is impossible," Uncle Raymond shrieked, his voice cracking as he stared at my phone as if it were a ticking bomb. "They would never leave everything to her. We are their children. They left it to Elena because they knew exactly what kind of vultures you were," Mr. Sterling replied smoothly over the speakerphone. "Furthermore, the eviction notice you are holding is a completely fraudulent document. My firm has already filed a formal complaint with the state bar, and the police have been notified of your attempted illegal lockout." The 2 moving men didn't need to hear another word. "We're out of here, man," the leader said, shaking his head at my uncle. "We ain't getting busted for grand larceny." They turned on their heels, climbed into their truck, and sped down the driveway, leaving my family stranded on the porch. Mr. Sterling's voice cut through the heavy silence once more. "Raymond, Victoria, I suggest you look toward the end of the driveway. Local authorities are arriving right now. You have exactly 60 seconds to step off Elena's property, or you'll be arrested for criminal trespass, fraud, and elder estate manipulation." As if on cue, The distant sound of police sirens began to echo through the trees. Aunt Victoria let out a sharp gasp of pure horror, grabbing her husband's arm. The arrogant, greedy expressions they had worn just an hour ago were completely gone, replaced by absolute panic as they realized their $40 million dream had turned into a criminal nightmare. They scrambled off the porch like rats fleeing a sinking ship, tossing their fraudulent documents into the dirt as they sprinted toward their luxury cars, just seconds before the police cruisers pulled into the gravel driveway. It was a pathetic, humiliating end to their grand scheme. 3 months have passed since that fateful afternoon, and the dust has finally settled. As the sole executor and heir of my grandparents' $40 million estate, my life has completely transformed. It turns out that Aunt Victoria and Uncle Raymond were drowning in massive personal debts, counting on this house to save them from financial ruin. When the truth came out, their creditors descended upon them, and I refused to give them a single penny of my grandparents' hard-earned money. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. Instead, I chose to preserve this beautiful lake house exactly as it was, keeping their memory alive in every polished floorboard and blooming flower bed. I've also used a significant portion of the inheritance to establish a protective foundation for young adults who have been financially abused or manipulated by greedy relatives after losing their parents. If you were standing in that driveway, watching your own blood try to dismantle your life piece by piece, would you have left them to drown in the financial ruins of their own making? Or is blood truly thicker than you know how you would have handled a betrayal this deep? If you're ready for another look into how absolute greed can unravel a family's deepest secrets, tap the video on your screen right now. I'll see you over there, and thank